Welcome, everybody. This is Artist on Record, your ultimate intimate conversation with your favorite artists. And tonight we have a special guest from the Rascals. Mr. Felix Cavaliere is coming up next. He has a new book and new stories to tell you. Make sure, if you love rock and roll as much as we do, subscribe and hit that bell to be reminded. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Mr. Felix Cavaliere coming up next. Bam! Because let me tell you, Felix, now that I got you here, you're trapped because you were just a childhood memory for me personally. CBS FM, I would listen to as a kid, Cousin Brucey, and just your music from Beautiful Morning, Groovin'.
It's a beautiful morning. Ain't no place I like to be instead of moving.
All these songs that you have sang and just the voice, I get to meet you, and it's really a true honor. So you don't mind if I kiss your ass a little bit?
Yes. Hi, everybody all over America. This is your Cousin Brucey. It's the WABC Party Go Go. Woo!
You know, Brucey's still on the radio, man.
He is, yeah. God
He's
bless
on
him.
ABC's where he started, AM, you know, which is where we met him in those days, you know.
Wow.
But yeah, no, listen, you know, that's one of the good things about New Yorkers, man. I mean, you know, they're faithful, they're loyal, they remember, you know.
You have a book coming out, your memoir you wrote.
Well, I started it a while ago, and, you know, it's really interesting because the reason that I started, we did the Rascals got together in, what was it, 2013, 14 with Steve Van Zandt to put us together to do a Broadway show.
The Rascals, once upon a dream, bringing their great story to Broadway and reuniting one of the most influential and artistically important American bands in rock and roll history, the Rascals.
And so during that show, basically, as we were promoting, you know, the shows, they would ask us questions. Everybody had a different answer. You know, where'd you get your name? What about this? What about that? So I said, you know, I've got to write down my answers because I could have sworn I was there. You know what I'm saying? So that's what started it. And I started to write down, you know, and then it evolved from that to like, well, see, I grew up in Westchester County, up in Pelham, and then it became like, well, a memoir of a rascal from Pelham to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then, you know, you realize, you know, when you write something, you're telling stories that, you know all these years over and over and over and over. So it's just kind of like a picture of what happened to me, which was kind of, you know, different because I had absolutely no idea that I was going to be a musician. You know, I mean, I was started off in music, but I was started off to be classical. In other words, to be a classical pianist. Never the slightest thing, you know, was for me to go into, you know, whatever you want to call rock and roll, etc. But it happened, you know, it happened because, you know, my path took me to Syracuse University, and from Syracuse University to the Raleigh Hotel in the Catskills, from Raleigh in the Catskills to Joey D in Europe. Worked with the Beatles before they came to the United States. And then the next thing you know, okay, we start a band. So it's been like a real interesting story, at least for someone who had absolutely no idea that this was going to be my life.
Crazy. Now, your family, what did they think when you got the rock and roll bug?
Right. Well, you know, I mean, it was very different for all of us, you know, because no one in my family, you know, was in this industry at all. I mean, you know, basically my family's mostly were in medicine. They were medicine people, and that's what I was going to Syracuse for. I was pre-med. Oh. But, you know, of course, you know, my mom didn't make it. She passed before I even started this. But, you know, my dad, you know, well, you know, he kind of looked at it like, I mean, interesting, you know, like people would come up and say, hey, doctor, do you know how much soul your son has? And my father would say, well, I don't know. The only soul I got is on my shoes, you know. So, you know, he had no idea, absolutely no idea. But to his credit, he gave me his blessing. He says, "Look, give it a try. Give it a try." You know, because I was doing well, even though, you know, I wasn't making any money or anything, but I was, you know, I was getting accolades and people making me offers. So he gave me a shot, which I appreciate.
Yeah. But, you know, you mentioned Joey D and the Starlighters, which everybody, Peppermint Twist, the hit song in 61, big hit song. How did you get involved with those cats?
Well, what happened is, I say, I went, you know, from college to a summer job in the Catskills at the Raleigh Hotel. And the Raleigh Hotel would have acts come in every weekend. One of the weekends was Joey D that came in. And there was a road manager there who actually saw me because we were working in the lounge and we were working, you know, like in the hotel.
They got a new dance and it goes like this.
And he kind of remembered me. So little did I know that was going to be life-changing because, you know, it was also the Brigadis were there. I mean, David was there. Yeah. So I met my karmic wheel, you know, it happened. Yeah. So when they left, they were going to Europe for a tour. And during that tour, their organ player quit. So they remembered me, called me up, and instead of me going back to, you know, Syracuse, I went to Europe. That's how we met. So it's all kind of like a big karmic story, you know. I mean, there's no doubt about it. How things happen, you know, you'd like to take credit for it, but you know it was divinely inspired that this would happen. And it happened.
Yeah, yeah. Is it true? Did Joe Pesci play guitar with them?
At one time, sure.
At one time,
yeah. Well, you know, a lot of the people like Joe, and you know, like if you know, like Johnny Depp, all these guys, they all play music.
That's right, Johnny.
So besides the fact that they're actors, you know, they were also musicians. And in those days, you know, to be a musician, you know, you're part of it as well. Was a pretty cool thing to do. I mean, you know, we all wanted to do it. Everybody wanted to do it at some time in their life, you know. Well, he did, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know which door is going to lead you. Like Johnny Depp, you bring him up. He came to L.A. from Florida with a band. He had no vision of being an actor. And look what happened. So
exactly.
No vision.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people, young people all the time. You know, don't worry about it. You know, you've got a destiny. Just when you see a door open, go in.
Go in. You just got to go for it. You really got to go with your gut, your heart.
Yeah.
The Beatles. You went on tour with the Beatles, and I've heard you many times talk about the stories because at that time you go there to Screaming Girls. Nobody knew. We didn't know the Beatles yet. The world didn't know.
They weren't here. It's about a year before they came to the United States, but they certainly knew in Europe.
Yeah, they knew in Europe. What was that whole experience about?
Well, basically, you know, as I say, you know, when I went over there to work with Joey, he was working in Frankfurt. He was working in Hamburg. He was working in Sweden, and believe it or not, they opened for him.
Yeah. Wow, it's crazy, huh?
But it was, you know, it was kind of really a unique experience because what we saw when they came here was already established there. The screaming, the hollering, the hysteria. So when you walk into a club to go to work and you experience that, it's strange.
It's strange. I mean, they loved American music, and you could hear it in their music. It was all when they met you guys, because here you guys have come from America. Did they like stand at the side, like want to watch? Hey, what's going on?
Well, you know, the thing is, it was impossible to do that.
Yeah, it was
because of the the chaos that these fans created there. You know, you could barely hear yourself. You know, I mean, this was hysteria. I mean, that's the only word you can say. I mean, you know, we saw it when they came here, like when, you know, my past manager, rest his soul, Sid Bernstein, you know, he brought them to America. He brought them to first Ed Sullivan, and then he brought them to Shea Stadium, which at that time was, you know, the largest concert, you know, that they had ever had, about 50,000.
Crazy.
You couldn't hear them. You couldn't hear them at the show. I mean, all you heard was screaming and hollering, you know. So it was uniquely different.
Wow.
You know, I mean, what is this? You know what I mean? What's going on here? Well, everybody soon found out, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, what is something that shut the world. Now you mentioned Bernstein, and is this true when he was promoting, okay, the Beatles and all this, and he was working with you guys, he posted the Rascals are coming at Shea Stadium. And tell me if this is true. Brian Epstein, did he have some, what was the story with Brian Epstein removing the post or anything like that?
Well, I mean, the old timers, the Sid Bernsteins and the people from that era,
Yeah.
their whole kind of like way of publicizing was to get your name out in front of the public anyway, by any means necessary. So he would inject us into these strange places. Like, for example, when the Beatles came to the United States, naturally there were press conferences. So Sidala would put in like these ringers in the audience to ask questions about the Rascals. By the way, John, after about the third or fourth question, John, who was a pretty hip guy, picked up on, aha, I see there's a plan here. Now, of course, we were so embarrassed. I wanted to crawl under the table, you know what I mean? Because that's how they did it, I don't care what you say about me, just mention my name. That old timer thing, that's where Sid and those guys were at. There used to be columns. Ed Sullivan, for example, he was a columnist.
That's right.
And if you got in that column, like, before us, Walter Winchell, and there was all kinds of people, New York Post, all that, you got in there, people heard your name, So it was so interesting, the transition from that world to what became like the so-called 60s world. And now it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, here we are. This is the way to publicize yourself.
It's a whole different ballgame. So you go from Joey D, you're playing the organ, but you're not being a singer. But how did the move?
That's a great story there, man.
The young Rascals. So let's bring them on.
That was Felix Cavaliere talking on part 1, but we have part 2, and it's coming right over here. So just click on that box for more of Felix. In the meantime, let's keep the chat going in the comments down below. All righty, kids? And don't forget to find us on iHeartRadio, Spotify. Also, check us out on Patreon. We have an all-access VIP backstage pass that will unlock unedited content that you might not see here.